Thanks very much, and congratulations to everybody who's built this campaign and who's out here demonstrating and marching today. When I first heard this news, I was absolutely horrified that they would put missiles on top of blocks of flats where people live, next to primary schools, next to communities, in the middle of an area which has some of the most overcrowding of anywhere in London, which suffered terribly during the Second World War. Tower Hamlets was the worst affected borough in the whole of London because of the Blitz, and suffered rockets repeatedly as a result of the Second World War. And it's absolutely horrifying to think that these people are considering doing it again. I cannot understand what the threat is supposed to be that justifies surface-to-air missiles being on top of residential blocks of flats. There is already a no-fly zone over London during the Olympics. That should be enough to stop anybody attacking by air. And if these missiles go off, if they're used deliberately or accidentally, they will have horrific consequences for the local people, not just in Tower Hamlets, but across the whole of East London. And therefore we have to say we do not want these missiles here, they have to be stopped. And that is the message we want to put across loud and clear this afternoon. But there are two other things I want to say. Why are they using these missiles? Why are they sighting them? Why are they pretending that they're here to protect us? Is it because in future they want to be able to use missiles and tanks on the streets without having opposition from the general public? Is this a kind of softening up process which actually means we'll see more and more military on the streets of London and on the streets of Britain? Because that is something that we have to oppose. The final points I'd like to make are these. You will have a terrorist threat in Britain as long as there are wars in Afghanistan, in Iraq, and the threatened wars in Syria and in Iran. If we want to make London a safer place, then let's get the troops out now. That is the message we should be sending to our government. The final point has been made by previous speakers is this. The cost of the Olympics, £9 billion. The cost of the policing and missiles and security, millions if not billions more pounds. How is it we live in one of the richest countries in the world which is closing libraries, which is closing schools, which is closing hospitals, but cannot find the money for our welfare services while it finds money for weapons of war? We have to fight to change this government's priorities and to end the austerity which is breeding more wars. Thank you very much.
No way!
MOT, hit us say!
Eastern missiles, no way!
MOT, hit us say!
Eastern missiles, no!
Get those missiles out and vote!
MOD have got to go!
Get those missiles out and vote!
MOD now!
What do we want?
Missiles out!
When do we want it?
Now!
What do we want?
Missiles out!
When do we want it?
Now!
What do we want?
Missiles out!
When do we want it?
Now!
What do we want?
Missiles out!
When do we want it?
Now!
What do we want?
Missiles out!
When do we want it?
Now!
The front door.
ARG4! Missiles out the front door! 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 Now!
What do we want?
Missiles out!
When do we want it?
Now!
What do we want?
Missiles out!
When do we want it?
Now!
What do we want?
Missiles out!
One of the crazy little details in what is quite a surreal campaign has been that that's the water tower up there. That is the proposed site of the launch pad of the missiles, and that water tower was actually hit by lightning and badly damaged by lightning about 2 months ago. And that should maybe have been a warning to the people who are thinking of putting explosives within meters of people's living quarters, that it's really not a very good idea. Now, Stop the Olympics Missiles campaign has agreed to support the demonstration on the 28th of July, which is taking on a number of different issues about the terrible way that the Olympics have been organised, the securitisation, the militarisation of the Games. And I'd just like to hand over to Dave Renton, who's one of the people from the Counter Olympics campaign, who's going to say a few words about that demonstration. Dave.
Thanks, Chris. Listen, when in 1888, a group of 15 and 16-year-old girls who worked in this factory, when they got together and started to protest against the terrible wages they had, against their fussy jaws, which made them retire in their 20s, when a group of socialist journalists came down to stand just where we are, and I don't think they had amplified megaphones in those days, but they had street meetings like this one, and when they came together and pulled the workers out on strike, they gave birth to the modern trade union movement. The largest unions in Britain were all formed within 12 months of that strike. But I bet Annie Besant never thought for a second that 100 years later we'd be protesting here to keep missiles and a missile battery out of East London. I'm not going to go on much more than that, you've heard enough speeches already, but just to say, 28th of July, 12 o'clock, Mile End. There'll be thousands of us here from every campaign that's represented today. I want all of you here, spread the word, make it big. Welcome to our event too. See you then.
Thanks very much, Dave. And now to round things off, I'd like to ask Brian Whelan again to say a few words, partly about next steps for the campaign. As I said earlier, Brian was the person who first went public against these crazy plans. He was actually a resident of this building. He was, and he spoke out at the time, and very shortly after he spoke out, he actually got kicked out of his flat. So he's been someone who stood up very, very strongly from the very beginning. Please give a big round of applause to Brian Whelan.
I want to marry him.
Yeah, I'll keep it brief again. It's nice to be back at Bow Quarter. I'd like to thank all the staff at Olive Verjot for the way they absolutely fucked up my tenancy, ruined my summer and forced me to have to lose my home. So thanks a lot. I mean, we're out here absolutely in solidarity with the people of Bow Quarter and the people of Bow who have to live with this, who've had this plan imposed on them with no consultation. Philip Hammond has claimed that there's minimal opposition to this. I think we've seen time and again in public meetings, in Blackheath, at Fredwig, that there's definitely opposition to this and growing. I would ask that, well, I've got two invitations. One is to all of you to come back here on the day they try and force this plan through by bringing the day they bring the missiles in, the real ones, the day the army and the armed police show up. And that if they're going to force this plan through, they at least have to face the prospect of the world's media broadcasting images of them forcing that military hardware into our homes, past picket lines, past protesters, past residents who don't want this to happen. So I'd also like to invite the MOD to once again come out, debate the issue, be grown-ups and explain why they think they can get away with this, what the precedent is, why this has to happen. Come down, you know, they know where we are. I'd love to debate them. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that, Brian. Thanks to everyone for coming. One of the other strange things about this campaign was that when we asked the MOD to come along and discuss the issue with us, they said that the consultation process will start after the decision has been made. So they don't really understand the meaning of the word consultation. The decision will be made in the next few days, so we have to keep the campaign up. I think today has been another blow against them. I just want to go through those dates for the next protest moments so that you've all got them in your diaries. Next Monday, not this week, but next week, the 9th, to support the people in Leytonstone who are taking up their court case at the Courts of Justice. That's in the morning. The 28th of July, the demonstration against the militarisation and the corporate takeover of the Olympics. And finally, just to reiterate Brian's suggestion, put your name down on the petition, make sure that we have your email address and preferably your phone number. The moment the residents hear that they are moving missiles into this block, we will send out a message, we will send a call out to everyone on that list to come down and do their best to make sure those missiles never get into Bow Quarter. Thank you very much.
New World Order. Serious stuff.
Roll it up. No? Do you want to start on yours? We'll keep going. Fantastic. Well, I've got